It was a hot and sunny day in the southern part of Nigeria. My name is Chidi, and I was on a road trip with my friends Emeka, Obiora, and Namdi. We were heading to a small village near the Obudu cattle ranch for a short holiday. We had been planning this trip for weeks, and we were all really excited to get away from the busy city life. As we were driving down the long, winding road, Emeka suddenly shouted, "Look out!" I quickly turned my head and saw a huge tree branch blocking the road. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. We crashed right into the branch, and our car came to a sudden stop. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, looking around at my friends. They were all shaken up, but thankfully no one was hurt. "I think we have a flat tire," Namdi said, getting out of the car to inspect the damage. We all got out of the car to see what had happened. The front tire was completely flat, and the branch had also caused some damage to the front of the car. "Now what are we going to do?" Obiora asked, looking worried. "We'll have to change the tire," I said, "and then we'll have to find a way to clear the road so we can continue our journey." We worked together to change the tire, but as we were doing that, we heard a strange noise coming from the bushes nearby. "What was that?" Emeka asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, "but we should probably get back in the car and get out of here as soon as possible." We quickly finished changing the tire and got back in the car. As we were about to start driving again, we heard the noise again, this time much closer. "I think we should investigate," Obiora said. "It could be someone who needs help." "I don't know, Obiora," Namdi said. "It could be dangerous." "Come on, let's just take a quick look," Obiora insisted. Against my better judgment, I agreed, and we all got out of the car and headed towards the bushes. As we got closer, the noise became louder and more menacing. We could hear the sound of branches snapping and leaves rustling. "I'm telling you, this is a bad idea," Namdi said, his voice shaking. "Shh, keep quiet," Obiora whispered, holding up his hand. We slowly made our way through the bushes, our hearts pounding in our chests, and then we saw it. A large, hulking figure was standing in the middle of the path, blocking our way. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It looked like a cross between a human and a wild animal, with a huge, muscular body, long, sharp claws, and a face that was distorted and twisted. "What the?" Emeka gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. The creature turned its head towards us, its eyes glowing with a primal, savage intensity. It let out a bone-chilling roar that sent shivers down my spine. "Run!" I shouted, and we all turned and bolted back towards the car. We ran as fast as we could, our lungs burning, our legs aching. I could hear the creature's heavy footsteps behind us, getting closer and closer. As we reached the car, Namdi fumbled with the keys, trying to unlock the doors. "Hurry!" Obiora shouted. Finally, the doors clicked open, and we all piled in, slamming the doors shut behind us. "Drive, Namdi, drive!" I yelled. Namdi turned the key in the ignition and put the car in gear, but to our horror, the engine wouldn't start. "What's wrong?" Emeka cried. "I don't know, it's not working," Namdi said, his voice panicked. We could hear the creature's roars getting closer and closer. We were trapped. Suddenly, the creature appeared in front of the car, its massive body blocking our path. It let out another bone-chilling roar, and then it started to advance towards us. "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" Emeka whimpered, her face pale with fear. I didn't know what to say. We were completely helpless, trapped in the car with this monstrous creature bearing down on us. As the creature drew closer, I could see its sharp claws and its gaping, drooling mouth. I closed my eyes, preparing for the worst, but just then, a noise from the bushes behind us caught the creature's attention. It turned its head and let out a low, guttural growl. Suddenly, another creature emerged from the bushes, this one even larger and more terrifying than the first. The two creatures began to fight, their massive bodies crashing together and their claws slashing through the air. "This is our chance!" Obiora shouted. "Let's get out of here!" We quickly piled out of the car and ran towards the bushes, desperate to get away from the fighting creatures. As we ran, I could hear the sounds of the battle raging behind us, the roars and the crashes of the two beasts locked in mortal combat. We ran for what felt like hours, our lungs burning and our legs aching. Finally, we reached a small clearing in the bushes and we stopped to catch our breath. "What the hell was that thing?" Namdi gasped, his face pale with fear. "I have no idea," I replied, "but whatever it was not human." "We have to get out of here," Emeka said, her voice trembling. "We have to find help." "But how?" Obiora asked. "We're in the middle of nowhere and our car is back there with those things." We all looked at each other, unsure of what to do. We were lost, scared, and completely alone. As we were trying to figure out our next move, we heard a noise coming from the bushes nearby. We all froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the bushes. It was an old man, his face weathered and his eyes filled with a strange, haunted expression. "You should not be here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "My name is Babajumo," the old man replied, "and you must leave this place quickly." "But our car is back there," Emeka said, "and those things are still out there." Babajumo shook his head. "You must not go back that way. Those creatures are not to be trifled with." "What are they?" Obiora asked, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Babajumo sighed. "They are the cursed ones, the restless spirits of the forest. They have dwelled in these woods for generations, preying on anyone who dares to venture too deep." "Cursed ones?" Namdi repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Babajumo nodded. "Yes, they are the embodiment of a dark and ancient evil that has plagued this land for centuries. They are not to be taken lightly." We all looked at each other, our faces pale with fear. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You must follow me," Babajumo said, turning and leading the way deeper into the bushes. "I will take you to a safe place where you can rest and plan your next move." We hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to trust this strange old man. But with no other option, we had no choice but to follow him. As we walked, the forest grew darker and more dense, the branches and vines seemingly closing in around us. I could feel a sense of unease and foreboding growing within me with every step we took. Finally, Babajumo led us to a small, ramshackle hut nestled deep within the forest. It was a simple structure, made of wood and thatch, but it seemed sturdy and well-maintained. "This is my home," Babajumo said, gesturing for us to enter. "You will be safe here for now." We stepped inside the hut, grateful to be out of the oppressive darkness of the forest. The inside was sparse but clean and well kept. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," Babajumo said, gesturing to a few simple wooden chairs. We sat down, our bodies weary from the ordeal we had just been through. "Now tell me," Babajumo said, "how did you end up in these cursed woods?" We explained to him what had happened, how we had been on a road trip and our car had broken down, and how we had encountered the strange, monstrous creatures. Babajumo listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I see," he said, nodding slowly. "Yes, the creatures you encountered are indeed the cursed ones, the restless spirits of the forest." "But what are they?" Emeka asked, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "They are not of this world," Babajumo replied, his voice low and solemn. "They are the embodiment of a dark and ancient evil that has plagued this land for generations." "How did they come to be?" Obiora asked. Babajumo sighed deeply. "It is a long and tragic story, one that has been passed down through the generations. Many years ago, there was a powerful and evil sorcerer who lived in these woods. He was a practitioner of dark magic, and he sought to harness the power of the spirits of the forest to further his own twisted desires." Babajumo paused, his eyes filled with a haunted expression. "The sorcerer performed a dark ritual, one that was intended to bind the spirits of the forest to his will. But something went terribly wrong. Instead of gaining control over the spirits, the sorcerer unleashed a great and terrible evil upon the land." "What happened?" Namdi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The spirits of the forest, once pure and benevolent, were corrupted and twisted by the sorcerer's dark magic. Baba Juma replied. They became the cursed ones, hulking, savage creatures driven by a primal and uncontrollable hunger. Baba Juma paused, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. The sorcerer himself was destroyed, his body and soul consumed by the very evil he had unleashed. But the cursed ones remained, roaming these woods, preying on any who dare to venture too deep. We all sat in silence, our minds reeling from the horrors that Baba Juma had described. "So what do we do now?" I asked, my voice trembling. Baba Juma looked at us, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. "You must leave these woods as quickly as you can," he said. "The cursed ones will not rest until they have consumed you, body and soul." "But our car is back there," Emeka said, her voice filled with fear. "And those things are still out there." Baba Juma shook his head. "You cannot go back that way. It is too dangerous. You must find another way out of these woods." "But how?" Obiora asked, his voice filled with desperation. Baba Juma paused, his brow furrowed in thought. "There is a path, a hidden trail that runs through the deepest part of the forest," he said, his voice low and serious. "It is a dangerous and treacherous path, but it may be your only chance of escape." "What kind of dangers are we talking about?" Nnamdi asked, his voice trembling. "The cursed ones are not the only creatures that dwell in these woods," Baba Juma replied. "There are other dark and twisted beings, creatures of the night that feed on the fear and despair of those who wander too deep." We all looked at each other, our faces filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "What choice do we have?" I said, my voice firm. "We have to try." Baba Juma nodded. "Then you must be prepared. The path ahead will be treacherous, and you must be vigilant and courageous if you are to survive." He reached into a small chest and pulled out a handful of items, a map, a compass, and a small knife. "Take these," he said, handing them to me. "They may be of use to you on your journey." We all took the items, grateful for the support and guidance that Baba Juma was providing. "Now you must go," Baba Juma said, ushering us towards the door. "Time is of the essence. The cursed ones will not rest until they have found you." We stepped out of the hut, our hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. "May the spirits of the forest watch over you," Baba Juma said, his voice filled with a somber tone. We nodded, and then we set off, following the hidden trail that Baba Juma had described, deeper into the dark and foreboding forest. As we walked, the trees grew thicker and the undergrowth became more dense. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the sound of distant bone-chilling howls. We kept our eyes peeled, our senses heightened as we navigated the treacherous path. The map and compass that Baba Juma had given us were invaluable, guiding us through the maze of twisting trails and tangled vines. But even with the tools he had provided, the journey was not an easy one. We encountered all manner of obstacles and dangers, fallen trees, deep ravines, and even the occasional wild animal that seemed to be drawn to the fear and despair that radiated from us. At one point, we heard a rustling in the bushes nearby, and we froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. Nnamdi gripped the knife that Baba Juma had given us, his knuckles turning white with the intensity of his grip. Slowly, a figure emerged from the bushes, and we all let out a collective sigh of relief when we saw that it was just a small, harmless creature. A deer, perhaps, or some other woodland animal? But as we continued on, the sense of unease and foreboding only grew stronger. We could feel the presence of something dark and sinister lurking in the shadows, watching us, waiting to strike. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached a small clearing in the forest. We stopped to rest, our bodies weary and our nerves frayed. "Do you think we've lost them?" Emeka asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I replied, my voice tense. "But we can't afford to let our guard down. Those things could be anywhere." We sat in silence for a moment, our eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a loud, bone-chilling roar erupted from the bushes nearby, and we all jumped to our feet, our hearts racing. "Run!" Obiora shouted, and we took off, our legs pumping as we dashed through the forest. We could hear the thunderous footsteps of the cursed ones behind us, their savage cries echoing through the trees. We ran as fast as we could, our lungs burning, our legs aching. Finally, we reached another small clearing, and we stopped, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. "Where are we?" Namdi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I pulled out the map that Baba Juma had given us and tried to orient myself. I'm not sure," I replied, my voice shaking. We looked around, our eyes darting from one tree to the next, searching for any sign of the cursed ones.